Park and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting of May 28th, 2015 is now in order. And we shall have introductions starting on my right.
Kathleen Baker.
Daniel Tupper.
Sean Dessler.
Doug Neely.
Bob Burns.
Joyce Gifford.
Roger Fowler Tice.
Denise Kai staff.
Scott Archer staff.
Thank you. Next, the approval of minutes from the April 23rd meeting of the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee. Do we have any corrections to those minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as distributed.
I'll second those.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of April 23rd. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Minutes are approved. At this time, we have an opportunity for citizen comments on issues that are not on the agenda. So I believe we have one. Is that correct?
I've got Mike Mitchell signed up for that, at least one person.
Okay, Mike Mitchell. Welcome, Mike. Nice to see you again.
Thanks. Yeah, good to see all of you again. My name is Mike Mitchell. I'm a Oregon City resident, and I'm here to speak to you tonight and tell you about the very beginnings of what I think is an exciting new initiative, and that is the Oregon City Parks Foundation. And before I get into that, I want to start by recognizing Roger Fowler Tice and his wife, Christina. This was their idea. They came forward with a vision for what a foundation could do for our park system. They put together our first meeting, which was 2 nights ago, put a lot of work into vision, into reaching out for people that they thought would be interested in such an effort. And whatever success that this foundation ends up having, it's going to be because they took the initiative to get started. So, Roger, publicly thank you very much. I was asked and I'm honored to serve as the first chair of the group, at least through this organizational phase that we're headed into that I'll tell you about in just a minute. Why a foundation? Real briefly, there are grant opportunities, donation opportunities, volunteer opportunities that a foundation, as a charitable foundation, can go after that the city can't to support our park system, and that will be the goal of this foundation. We had about 15 people at our first meeting. There's a lot of enthusiasm and interest. Roger was there, of course. Blaine was there. Joyce and her husband were there. It's a good group. It's an enthusiastic group. 2 of our city commissioners were there, Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Shaw, and it was terrific to see their interest and involvement in this as well. Almost everybody there, almost without exception, other than the 2 commissioners, volunteered to be a part of a steering committee, which will help get the foundation underway. The 2 commissioners will not be a part of that because it's important that this is an independent group. Of course, it's going to cooperate closely with the city and with the Parks Department, but management-wise and structure-wise, it's a separate organization from the city in order to be a charitable foundation. So that was our first meeting 2 nights ago. We're sort of going after this kind of 2 different areas that we're pursuing at the same time. First, the steering committee is working on a mission statement or value statement, whatever you want to call it, exactly what it is we want to do to support our park system. So we're working on that. That's kind of the easy part. Then we have to move into bylaws because it does have to be a corporate structure with a board of directors, officers, terms, elections, all those sorts of things to satisfy the legal requirements of being a 501c3 charitable foundation. So that's what we're going after, kind of on one track. At the same time, with the help of Blaine Meyer, who has done this sort of thing with a couple of other foundations already, we're going after the 501c3 status. It starts with being recognized as a corporation by the state of Oregon. That, we understand, is a pretty simple process. And then a more complicated IRS process, where I think Blaine said was a 31-page questionnaire, and 3 or 4 months possibly before we would hear on that. Theoretically, in the meantime, we could accept donations, but they would not be tax deductible for anyone until that 501c3 status kicks in. So those 2 efforts are going on now. Just a couple other things I want to point out, and Bob, you don't have a clock, do you? No.
It's off for you right now.
Okay. The name of the organization is Oregon City Parks Foundation, but it encompasses a little more than parks. We talked a lot at our meeting about all of the heritage and historic sites that are in our city that may not be thought of as quote-unquote parks, but they fall within the purview of the Parks Department, and they really provide the same sort of benefit and amenities to the citizens. Ermitinger House, the end of the Oregon Trail Center, and the really exciting one coming online, the Willamette Falls Heritage Area and the Riverwalk. So those are things that, while may not be thought of strictly as parks, that I believe would be something that this foundation will be interested in. I want to just throw in a little sidebar that I forgot to mention. And Joyce and Roger, you can correct me if I get out ahead of my interference. But as I said, there's nothing in writing yet. So what I'm passing on, I think, is a consensus of the steering committee that met Tuesday night. But as far as anything being in writing, it isn't yet. And it's my interpretation of where I think the group is headed. So if I'm headed into the ditch, speak up. Okay, so those historic sites, I think, will fall in the purview. And the other thing that probably does is trails, because there are so many trails in our parks, connecting our parks, and there's a lot of emphasis on more interconnection of our parks. So trails is probably something that's going to fall in there as well. Basically, that's it in a nutshell. Our next meeting is scheduled for June 8th at 6:30, and you are all invited to that. It'll be at the Pioneer Center. And I think that's it. The only other thing I might just mention real briefly is and it's a good news, bad news kind of thing. The good news is there's a lot of other organizations in the city, charitable organizations or friends group or whatever, where there's going to be some overlap. You know, I forget what you call those diagrams with the circles and people's things overlap. So here's the Parks Foundation. There's a trails organization that Blaine is very involved in, and there's going to be some overlap there. There's the Clackamas Heritage Partners, and there's going to be some overlap there. The good news is that's more people interested. The bad news is, I think one of the things, not bad news, but one of the challenges for us is we're going to have to make sure that we coordinate those efforts, that we're not we're not duplicating efforts, we're not forgetting about something. So I think there's a challenge, and we've talked about it back when I was on PRAC, because there are so many areas that interact with each other in the city. How do we maximize our resources? So that's all I have to say at the moment. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to field them. Oh, I should also mention that Christina is serving as our secretary for the time being, as I said, until we get a little more formalized.
Okay, questions for Mike? Do you have any questions they want to pose?
It's not a question, but I want to thank you for this. I think it's a great idea, and to get this going, you all, and looking forward to maybe jointly discuss things that we cannot do, but that you might be able to do. That'd be wonderful.
Right. Yeah, that's the intention.
So, next steps. The next meeting you have for June 8th.
Our next meeting is June 8th, and we hope to, at that meeting, we've with the help of the Google machine, we found a lot of mission statements and vision statements and bylaws of other similar parks foundations, and we'll be able to distill that, and we're pretty confident that we can come out of that next meeting with a vision statement or mission statement for the group, and then start heading into the bylaws, because I think we have to have a lot of that finalized before you can go to the IRS to get the 501c3, and we really can't move too far forward on that. Oh, another thing, during the meeting Tuesday night, William Gifford in the back of the room got our Facebook page set up while the meeting was going on. It's closed presently because there's just not any meat to put on the bones yet. But as soon as there's some structure, there's a vision statement, whatever, then we'll open that up publicly. William is also going to register a domain name of OregonCityParksFoundation.org for the group, and we'll get our website up and going again when there's a little more meat to put on the bones.
Well, that sounds exciting, Mike. I appreciate your efforts in this, and look forward to us moving this along.
Glad to do
I'm
it.
sorry to have missed that meeting. I was out of town, got back night before last, I knew there was an important meeting that I missed, but I'll be at the next one.
Be at the next one. Great.
Okay,
All right.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Mike, what time is it at on June 8th?
6:30.
6:30.
At the Pioneer Center, but not in the basement room, one of the,
Yeah, the
Upstairs.
upstairs, the upstairs,
Classroom.
one of the classrooms upstairs.
yeah, 6:30, June 8th.
And Roger, thanks to you for taking the lead on this.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is under general business, and A is our report from the library playground update. So,
I'll get us started and then, yeah, come on up, Kurt. We've got some other folks that'll be helping to present and answer questions. So for the PrAC members, you'll recall that you've discussed this issue at some previous meetings. The most recent one, it's been a few or several meetings ago that you last discussed this and made a recommendation about what your I guess preferences were on the redoing of the playground or the moving of the playground. Kurt's going to get into a little bit more detail, so I'm just trying to kind of hit the high points here real quick. But since the last time that this was discussed here, the design team has been working on this, and there have been a number of meetings. There have been meetings with the there's a library building committee, which is the project team and staff. Our assistant director Denise Kai serves on that committee and has extensive knowledge of that project and the process. So we'll probably weigh in some here too. And Kurt is a landscape architect. Joan is here from SEA, the architecture firm that's doing the library project. And then I think we've got a number of citizens here. And also a number of folks have signed up to speak on this item. So what I would suggest is I'm going to turn it over to Kurt in just a moment here, but that we do the presentation. Kurt's going to give you the update on where we're at, and then probably be a little bit of staff comment as well on top of Kurt's comments. And then I would suggest that maybe you open it up for public comment, and then have some discussion or deliberation. I would note too that it was sent in your agenda packet the memorandum and some support materials for this item from Maureen Cole, our library director, giving you a summary to kind of get you reminded where we've been and where we're at, and that's sort of the meat of this discussion. So I'd reference you to that. I apologize. I know we're having a little bit of technical challenges with those new screens that you're working with, but if you need a hard copy of any of that, we'll be glad to get those to you as we're having this discussion. And then lastly, I'd just like to mention that Maureen is on vacation this week. Unfortunately, her vacation just coincided with tonight's meeting, and so she would be here otherwise, but she's got her project team in her place. So with that, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Kurt Lango of Lango Hansen Architects. Yes, Joyce?
Since we can only see the first page, can't seem to scroll through, is when you change those slides, are we going to be able to see something different, or is it only going to be the first page?
is there more than one?
First page.
Well, there's,
Let me
there's,
do a test run.
there's 5 pages.
Can you-
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah,
All right.
That's
Okay.
just the display screen that you're looking at on that, and Kurt's controlling that one, so he'll scroll through those while
Okay.
he's talking to you. So
You're in control of all our
that's
computers.
not the part that's on your agenda documents and so forth. This is just
Yeah, we can't.
And as
Okay.
a reminder, if you haven't already done so, you can flip your monitors over to the display screen, either to the left or the right. Some of them are backwards. So, pardon me.
There's one that says presentation, one that says
Yeah,
screen.
yeah, but
But
we
they're
have
backwards now.
Yeah, we've got new monitors that we just put in, and apparently some of them, the little toggle switch, the wiring got put in backwards. So, anyway, with that, I'm going to just give the floor to Kurt Lango for some updates here.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Kurt Lango with Lango Hansen Landscape Architects. I'm pleased to be here before you again tonight. As Scott mentioned, I think we were here maybe about 4 months ago where we were talking a little bit more kind of holistically in terms of the park, library improvements, and then we also focused a little bit on the play area. And tonight, we want to talk more specifically briefly about some of the materials that we're proposing. As well as Scott mentioned, we have outreached and met with the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association a number of times. So we just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that were discussed at that meeting in terms of options. So probably no need to orient you, but the big round circle, of course, is the splash pad in the park, which is remaining. The library addition here down to the south, and then the play area located right there. And for all intents and purposes, it's exactly in the same location where we presented it last time. It does have a swing, a slide, and seating. I think the seating was something that we didn't have at that time, but in listening to some of the comments that we got from the Neighborhood Association, also from the Parks Department as well, and that's shown in brown. So we have seating kind of in the play area. Parents and kids can sit there. We have seating right over here as well, and then there's another bench here. We've also have some new trees, a new tree located right here, and a new tree located right there. So it is going to be kind of a bright and sunny spot, so we wanted to try to get a little bit of vegetation in that area. Just kind of a blow-up of the play area itself. So the green, that's plant material, and you can see the benches that I just described. The dash lines are and I think those of you that have reviewed play areas before know that we do have safety zones. So those are those kind of imaginary lines where sometimes they can overlap between pieces of equipment, other times they can't. So each one, the slide has its safety zone and the swing set as well. In terms of the height and the material, so what we're proposing, and I believe what we had proposed last time, was an 8-foot high slide. It's a plastic slide. It will have metal posts. And then a swing set. It will have 4 seats, similar to what is out there right now. It is also 8 feet high, and it will have it will be metal and steel as well. So over on the right-hand side, and can you see this on your screen now? Okay, great. So the top image, that just gives you an example of really how that will be structured. So you'll have single posts going up and then a top beam. The color, though, what we're looking at is over on the right-hand side is kind of a darker bronze color. I think what we heard from this group and I think the Historic Commission as well was really kind of dark, kind of muted tones, kind of earth tones, and so we've captured that in the design. So the post will be kind of a dark bronze. For the slide, what we're looking at is doing a tan colored slide. And then we will be doing safety tiles. And I believe that you've just installed those in Chapin Park? Yeah, Chapin Park. So it will be similar to that. And we'll be doing kind of an earth tone, kind of tan color. It shows a little bit orange here, but it's going to be more of a tan colored tile as well. So that gives you the resilient surface that is required. There's been a lot of discussion about the height and material. I think of course, the original or the slide that is out there right now is steel, is metal. There have been concerns about kids and just getting burned or kind of slide down and the steel really heating up. And so a plastic slide is being proposed as part of this project. Whether we do more of a bark chip or a tile, I think given this presence and those bark tend to kind of migrate and not wanting that to happen along this main kind of entry walk, we're suggesting a tile for that. I do want to go through just some other options that were being proposed and that we had discussed with the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. I think one comment was, what would it mean to have a 10-foot high swing set that would have a tripod type stance, which is similar to what it is right now. And if you can see the kind of safety zones between what we're proposing and that tripod, it actually takes up a substantially more room. It does fit, but it does mean that you might not be able to have a bench on one side. And it does seem to take up a lot more room. Also, the slide would have to be moved over closer to the building, and it would face full south, which isn't probably the best way. Maureen also asked us to take a look as well. You have a little bit of leftover space as you kind of overlap those zones. What would it mean to put in other types of equipment, just to make it a little bit more kind of interesting? And so we did take a look at that. And the last thing she said is, well, just think out of the box just for a second, and what would it mean if you developed a play area that was more kind of nature-based? And in this case, we didn't have the slide, but you could see some of the other elements that you could potentially fit in there. After, I think, a lot of discussions and this was presented to the Neighborhood Association, I think we've kind of landed back into this, thinking that over time, if you wanted, you could add more pieces of equipment. It doesn't prevent it, but it does replace what is out there right now. So I think that kind of describes kind of where we've been, since the last time we've met. We've met with Denise, Kai, and Scott Archer a number of times, kind of discussed what I think works best for this particular site and for the new addition.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you would have.
Any questions from?
I had one under number 2. I think it was, you made a comment that there would be less benches. So are the benches removed? Because it seems to me that it's about the same.
There is a bench over here.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that whole thing was bench.
Yeah.
That's grass with a small element.
This is all planting,
Okay.
in here, and just. And it may not, well, it matters a little bit, but I think we originally didn't have a bench there, and I think it might have been Denise that brought up a good point, is that they wanted to maybe prevent kids from running into the sidewalk or the street, and so is there a way to do a barrier there that also provides, a seating amenity?
So there, yeah. Oh, and I see it's very faint. That's why your original picture showed, you said the browns were the 3 benches, and so I was tying these green blocks into the same.
Yeah, it's they're not
okay.
shown brown here.
Thank you.
Other questions? Doug?
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, a couple. First of all, I think the tall swings are very popular. I mean, you've got adults sometimes sitting there in the evening and using them too, including me on occasions. It looks like you're talking about a small slide, or is that just an example of the material?
That's just an example of a material. So that slide there is maybe only 4 feet high, so it would be twice as high at least. Yeah.
How does it compare to the current height?
The current height is 10 feet.
And you're looking at 8 feet then?
Yeah.
Yes,
Is it
that's
10,
right.
10 feet? Yes. Yes, 8 feet.
Now, is this a safety limitation that's put on the city?
I don't think it's a code requirement to go from 10 to 8 feet. I think in discussions with the city and thinking about safety, they felt more comfortable with an 8-foot high slide.
I know that the city is exempt from suits for recreational accidents, but what is our history on having accidents? I'm not suggesting the old slide as a structure, but what's our history of having accidents off the slides?
In general, or at this site? Just in general?
At the current slide.
I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head. Not a high amount of incidents that I know of, but I don't know. I'd have to go back and review that information.
I mean,
But
there are aspects of the slide I can see they'd be more safe coming down, but I think that long chute was very, very popular with the kids.
Well, and I think Denise is probably going to make a couple of comments here. And again, just to remind you, Denise is on our kind of the technical design committee and has been working pretty closely with this, so she could probably offer some additional insight. But the city can do what it wishes. We may or may not accept different levels of liability as we make different decisions, but our job as staff is to make recommendations and base those recommendations on what we see as, quite frankly, our number one concern is safety, not just because of liability or the threat of lawsuits, but just we're concerned about people being safe. So that's our number one concern. And then we also look very closely at the maintenance aspect of things, which is where some of this fall material recommendation is coming from. And I'll let Denise talk to you a little bit more about that.
So with the safety aspect, we're also looking at the maintenance aspects. So with an 8-foot slide and 8-foot swings, there's different depths of safety material that we have to comply with. So the higher the implements go, the more safety material we have to put in. So if we go with the matting, we have to make sure that the matting matches the height values. But then the higher you go, the bigger your fall zones become. So for us, we were looking at values of fall zone material. If it's chip, that means currently we have chips out there in 10-foot swings. And if you go out there at any point in the day, there's big divots. That's not necessarily compliant. So we go in every day, or as close to every day as we can with the staffing levels that we have, and we have to rake those back in. So the more chips that we rake in and the more chips that go out, your safety values start decreasing over time. And so in the maintenance capacity, if those chips are leaving the site, that means that the guys are either blowing them or they're leaving the site. They get disrupted enough that they're out in the street or out in the grass or whatnot. So we're looking in terms of, we don't have a very big staff. The more we can contain the maintenance capacity, the more we can put our staff in places that have higher value needs. So we want to make sure that we do what we can do with the least amount of staff we have and do a really good job at what we do. So if we can contain areas that we're developing new in a safer way and a lower maintenance value way, that's kind of what we're looking at. Because unfortunately, we're not getting much bigger and our funding's not getting much bigger, but the city's getting bigger. And the expectation of the value of what we do gets higher. So we're trying to meet those values with the least amount of impact in budgetary costs over the long run. So with chips, we have to fill them back in each year. With a matting, we have, depending what matting you get, you have a value life of it. And it's usually more than, they're looking at 8 to 10. So is that right on that one? 8 to 10?
I've got a couple more questions, but if you want to go to Roger.
Roger.
First, that's
No,
fine.
no, that's okay. Put it, you can put it.
The matting and outside the playground area, the actual paving of the area, is this permeable material?
It is, I don't know how this one drains.
So are you asking if the concrete walks or the safety?
Asking about both.
Well, what we actually have, and the best way to do it is that these rubber tiles, they set on a concrete subslab. And so they have kind of a waffle pattern on the bottom of it. So water infiltrates down through the cracks onto the subslab below, and then that then sheds to a drain. So it ultimately gets picked up in a drain. It doesn't infiltrate down into the ground.
It's going to end up in the storm sewer somehow or another.
Yes, it is, and that is just because if you don't have a stable surface for those tiles, then they just end up wobbling over time and don't. They don't meet the safety standards, so it's almost required to put it on a concrete
Again,
subslab.
concrete but be done in some kind of slabs so that there are a certain degree of separation in the slabs. The water can permeate soil?
infiltrate down through that.
Yeah.
It's possible, but I'm not quite, the issue is that you're trying to compact also the sub-base below the concrete to kind of support the concrete. So even if you're putting slats in it, or slots, I don't know if you really get that much infiltration. Just kind of speaking honestly, it's something that we haven't done before.
Just have concerns. I mean, we're of course this is a build-out area, and there's not a whole lot we can do in terms of detention because this is built out. But stormwater concerns, particularly in this city, are major.
It is. For the other surfaces, for the concrete surfaces, we will have stormwater gardens or stormwater planters. So that water will be directed into kind of vegetation and will be filtered. We just, for this play area, it's typically not done.
You can't have, rather than directing it to the stormwater system, you can't direct this into a planter somehow. I know it's deeper, but
we can look into that.
Okay.
That we can check with our civil engineer on.
The other question I know that's come up with the neighborhood association is the amount of I'll say concrete service, and I like the plaza piece there on the left hand side, and I'm not that concerned about it, but it seems like the other paths that are going to the library have extensive concrete paths. That is, your surface of vegetative material is dramatically less than I think the current library has. And if you look at the very top, you have this large area exiting the splash pond area, and I'm wondering if you need all of that area, so much of that area under concrete, whether you could have more planting material. I like the plaza entries from the two sides. I think those are great. I know you're planning to have benches there and so forth as well. And I like it. For one thing, John McLaughlin donated that piece of land as a plaza, and I like that aspect of it. But I think there's a bit more concrete there than is personally that might be necessary, unless you can really defend it.
Well, I can defend it. I came here to talk about play areas.
I know. But we got people from the neighborhood association.
Well,
this issue up.
I think,
and the splash area is a player.
Well, it is, and I think what we hope with this addition is that for every one visitor to the library that you have now, we have 3, and so we're hoping that this becomes a magnet for people of all ages. And I think the amount of paving, what we felt would actually kind of respond to the higher use of the area. And there is existing pathway, there is an existing paving that's kind of in this area, certainly paving around that area. This is really needed as the main entrance. I think we have some really, wonderful seating opportunities here with the steps. So when I think it's all said and done, and we're adding trees in here, we met out at the site with the city manager, who really urged us to plant larger, more signature trees, which we're doing. So I think we're trying to reestablish the canopy, add green where we can, and kind of understand how people are going to use the site.
Other questions?
Yes,
Roger.
Thank you. The material, the rubber material, when it gets hot, in a hot sunny day, or during the summer when it's pretty warm out, say 80 or 85, what is the temperature on there? Is there any gases released from the rubber?
Well, I can't speak to the gas issue because that's something that we haven't encountered or hasn't been mentioned before in other projects. And we've recently installed these for Tualatin Parks and Rec District. We just did 2 parks where we did a similar tile system, and we've done them in other parks as well. And in terms of heating up, we've used a similar color on those parks, and we haven't heard any complaints from the park district at all. So I can't tell you exactly what temperature it is, but I can only respond to kind of what we've done before.
I know I'm going to be rehashing some old material here, but when we last talked, it was December 4th, and that's when we voted on this. And I'm going to be honest with you. I feel a little bit like I was led down a little bit different path, and I would. Do you happen to have any drawings with the old structure there in this building, the way it is right now? The drawings we had then had this design with this drawing where the play structure is, and another design where the building was about 12 feet longer on the 6th Avenue side, 6th Street side, and then the old play structure was in that drawing. I believe that's the way it was. I looked at it today, and the question was how much space there was between the building and the play structure for a path to go for people to walk between there. And I guess that's what I would like to. I wish there was some way to see that, because I want to be sure that I know that, like I said, this is retreading the old discussion, but I mean I'd like to see what that space was in between.
So I'm trying to kind of understand what the issue is, and so at that meeting, were you under the impression that we were keeping the existing play equipment?
What I was told was, or what we were told, excuse me, was that there were 2 meetings going on that night, and one at McLaughlin, the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, and this meeting going on at the same time. And when we got to the end of the discussion, Maureen came in and said that everybody was pretty much in agreement at the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association that it was okay. They didn't really it wasn't a big important detail as far as the old play structure being taken away and with a new one put in its place. And I'm hearing some different things about that, so there's probably some feelings that wasn't that way, that wasn't true.
I think maybe I could provide a little bit of clarification.
Joan, you might want to just reintroduce yourself
Yes,
on the
I-
record here. Thanks.
My name is Joan Jasper. I'm an architect with Scott Edwards Architecture. And you are correct in that we were at, different meetings at different times. And I can't remember the exact timeline, but we were directed by the city commissioners to do the 2-story with, off the back of the Carnegie, as you're seeing here. And we did do some illustrations showing the existing play structure as it stood, and what it illustrated is that we couldn't get to our entry, nor could we get an accessible path with which we're required to do on site. And we have been working with McLaughlin Neighborhood, and I don't think I'm misspeaking. With this configuration, what we have been discussing is the surface and the materials of the slide. So that's, and I mean...
We were also discussing the building and how many square feet. And there was a little confusion on the building being 12 feet smaller, and whether it was, whether there was less square footage in it. And then that was corrected at the end, when Maureen came in with, I'm sorry, I don't know the other fellow that was here, and I should have had that written down, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And he corrected, or actually,
Must have been
it was-
Sid Scott.
It was Mayor
It
Neely
was.
that got up and said something about the square footage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, then we were corrected that actually the square footage of the building was the same, even though the building was smaller this way.
I think the pictures were not necessarily to scale at that point. I think that was kind of the confusion of
It was
that.
pretty early on. We were showing kind of multiple schemes.
So, but the drawing was a larger, there was more building on the 6th slide than there was on the 7th
On the
slide.
7th Street.
No, one of there were two drawings we were looking at least two.
It was longer and narrower, so that there was more of a distance between the building and the spray park. The building was pushed back from what I recall.
It was
And-
probably relatively schematic at that point, and then we basically have programmed
Okay.
the library since then.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on this.
Just shoot.
A lot of this discussion occurred, but I believe there's some misunderstanding as to when it occurred. When we discussed buildings moving around and up and down was at the joint library PrAC meeting. After that recommendation, the city commission voted on one. After that, this design has never changed as far as a footprint.
Can I make a comment? Okay. And Sean is right regarding that. And I recall the discussion regarding the swing set height was currently 10 and was going to need to be 8. And the current slide height was 10 and was going to have to be 8. There was never, ever a mention at any of the prior meetings that it would be a plastic slide. And in this historic neighborhood, in this historic park, I am appalled to even think of seeing a plastic slide. Now, granted, the pictures of your slides, in green and other colors are better than the yellow ones that we're used to seeing, but it still is pretty jarring to me to even consider a plastic slide in this park. And I'm not sure why we moved away from the metal. You talked about it being hot. Plastic slides, have their problems too. And number one, I see a lot of kids going down those slides, especially with their tennis shoes, and their slides catch on those plastic, on the plastic, and the kids tumble down the slide rather than sliding down the slide. And again, being historic, I just think that the metal slide fits the look and feel of this neighborhood. And I just, I want you to explain to me why. I heard Denise talk about some issues maybe with maintenance, but I don't know.
Just a clarification, we do have metal slides in our parks, and on hot days when we start getting complaints that kids are getting burned, we'll actually go out and throw caution tape on them and close them. So we have done that on an occasion. Whether the caution tape stays up or not, we really do try to make an effort.
But there's been that metal slide, that 10-foot metal slide has been there a long time, and its predecessor was there even longer before that. Have there been problems?
There have been problems. They're not where we've been sued, but they have been reported, or hearsay, with kids getting burned. Maybe younger kids that probably shouldn't have been on them and falling. A lot of it lends to, we sometimes have to go to the lower common denominator to make sure that safety's a higher priority. And we take safety as an extreme priority in our industry. And when we see that there are falls, there are entanglements, there are kids that are falling off the edges, we know that does happen, but we also have to be cognizant of our liability and our value to protect kids.
Do we have any other plastic slides in our park system?
We have almost
Yeah, they
all
have
our
lots of them.
slides
Most
are
are.
plastic.
Most of them are?
I think to add on to what Denise is saying, just and your comment, Joyce, that when this was presented previously, the subject of the material of the slide never came up, and you're right. But that was what was discussed with PrAC was your recommendation was in essence that you wanted to make sure that we preserve the same amount of, and I think the word that we've been using, although I don't think we'd find it in the dictionary, but it's playability, and preserve the same level of that essentially. And so since then, what has been taking place is this discussions with the project team and the different things that we've been talking about. It's our job as staff to make recommendations that we think are the most appropriate thing to do for safety purposes, and that that's probably our top thing, and we can work down the list from there. So that discussion has evolved, and it's been several months, as has been noted. As I think I mentioned earlier, the city could put in a metal slide. It's just our recommendation is that we have an opportunity to. We're going to be replacing this equipment regardless of whatever happens, because when we take the old ones out, it's structurally not going to make sense for us to put it back in. So we can either put the exact same material, or we can take the opportunity to say, all right, there's a different standard of safety than was done 15 or 12 or number of years ago when that was put in. A lot of things change with safety standards over time, so we're doing our job as staff, and Kurt as a landscape architect works in the industry and builds lots of playgrounds, and it's just simply that we're saying this is what we're recommending. We know that there are different opinions about that, but as staff we're strongly recommending this type of material, and we've expressed the reasons why. I don't think we need to rehash those. So there wasn't specific discussion about the material previously, but we did discuss going forward how, what the concept of maintaining the type of equipment, not necessarily, we didn't discuss material. So that's why we're talking about it tonight. Yeah.
And I don't want to belabor this issue. I know that my opinion might be unpopular as well. I know that people feel very strongly about the historical nature and the metal slides and its history, but as someone with young kids, I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, I'm very familiar with slides. I don't believe that slide is, as safe as a plastic slide. And I think that Denise and the planning committee are doing a really good job of trying to balance safety and maintaining as much of a muted historical structure as they can. It's so important for a playground area to be a draw to a large group of people, not just, the historical charm of the neighborhood, but this this library is supposed to be a draw for the entire city, and that includes small children. And I would like to see a slide that my young children could also go on. I also had one other question about the swings with that regard, which is there going to be a toddler swing? I know that there's 4 sets. Is one of them going to include a toddler swing? There aren't any toddler swings planned right now. There are 4 just regular swings, and I think we'd heard from a number of people to try to match that as closely as we could.
Well, I'd like to, just a couple of comments. The park committee recommended a 6th Street entrance, which happened. We recommended a 2-story rather than a 1-story, which is happening, and to preserve the playground space, which is happening. So most of our recommendations have been honored. I didn't recall a whole lot of discussion about the kind of apparatus, so I'm hearing some things new for the first time myself. But anyway, those are my comments. I think as far as our recommendations, they're all in order as far as I'm concerned. Other comments? John?
I have a few questions for you guys. And Mayor Neely, or former Mayor, Doug's, I call you Doug.
Sorry. I called Doug one, I'm going to call anything else, I think.
My first question is kind of a piggyback on yours, not something I'd intended to ask, but when he brought up the idea of the concrete underneath, because this isn't supporting a lot of weight, can you use permeable asphalt? Because there is permeable asphalt that the entire thing would then permeate.
And there's permeable concrete.
Okay, I didn't know that.
As well.
Okay.
What'd you use at Chapin Park? Pardon me.
Yeah.
Chapin has the same material on the surface there.
We utilized just solid concrete at that site, and
Okay.
because of the amount of drainage that comes across it, it would just collect material. So we were trying to not, because permeable will need maintenance over time, and if you have matting over permeable and you have materials coming through it, it will clog.
Thank you.
So is that ever done in these? I mean, I think there's a big difference between Chapin and this. This is becoming a concrete pad, and so I think there was the concept here, or the conversation is maybe to minimize that. So to mitigate that, I'm wondering if that's something that's reasonable in this particular situation.
We've never done that before. That's not to say we can't do it. I think well, it's the whole. A lot of times when you use that pervious material, you have to make sure that what's under it allows that water to soak through. Otherwise, you kind of defeat the purpose. And so I think we'd have to take a closer look at the soils beneath and whether it would actually accept that water or not. And so we'd have to do a little bit of an investigation.
And we've got rock, we've got basalt pretty close to the surface. I know we wanted to do pervious pavers when we were looking at doing pavers around the splash pad, but we can't get the depth to make it work, both with utilities and what we think we might have basalt. And one revision that we've had since this site plan was created is we are maintaining the ground cover where there is grass. Currently, we're planting the trees, but we're not putting that ring of pavers. It helps with our grading. It falls in line with some requests, to keep more green space, that kind of thing. So that's slightly different than the illustration you're seeing above there.
Thank you. And so then going on to the questions that I was originally going to ask, is just trying to help me prioritize them. There's certain concerns are budgetary, certain concerns are related to the neighborhoods, and certain concerns are related neighborhoods' opinion, certain concerns are related to safety. And I'm not sure which ones are coming to the top yet. In other words, which one's the most heated discussion. For example, we heard a few minutes ago that the idea, if you go from 8 feet to 10 foot, your padding needs to get thicker. Now, the padding proposed is rubber, yet the whole discussion, I'm sorry, Denise, went to chips. So what I didn't hear is, does the pad that's proposed need to get thicker if you go between an 8 and a 10 foot?
Yes, it does.
Is that to the point where it is a cost consideration?
Well, I'm not writing the check for the project. I would say it's more expensive. Is it exorbitantly more expensive? I would say probably not, but it is more expensive.
So is it fair to say if we went from 8 to 10 foot, the material cost of the unit and the material cost to make it safe, in and of itself, is not a budget buster?
But what it means is that you're going from an 8-foot play apparatus to a 10-foot play apparatus, which is more expensive.
No, that's
So
what I'm
you
saying.
have to
The apparatus goes
yeah,
up and the
yeah,
rubber pad
yeah,
goes up,
yeah.
and you've shown that they fit. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that's the case, in case we hear that the number one important thing is the height of the slide. Now, if it's the third on the list, great. But I don't know that yet. We haven't heard that, so I'm wanting to understand.
Well, I think maybe Joan could speak more kind of where we are in terms of the budget right now.
Well, I mean, I think if you looked at the original budget, and we never had a playground in the budget.
Right.
So.
Which was a mistake, but
Well-
so what about the plastic slide versus metal? Are they comparable in price?
Good question. Without looking at the numbers, my sense is that the metal, because usually it's like a stainless steel, so it's just not like a regular metal, would be more expensive than a plastic slide.
Okay. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Well, one was a question for Denise. I just can't remember what equipment's in the Tots Park across the way.
There's a slide. I'm blanking all of a sudden. I think it's a multi-piece
Platform and-
platform
yeah.
and some like little climber.
There are swings, top
The
swings.
So
Slide in the swing.
the concern about having Todd swings, we do, I mean, one of the reasons the Todd Park came into being was recognition that the park there at the library really didn't serve younger children.
Typically, we cater to the age group divisions in a tot lot, which is 6 and under, and 6 to 7 and over in our bigger playground areas. We tend not to mix them. That's kind of an industry standard. And so the discussion was, could we mix those? And through all of the groups, it was leave it the way it is, because we have a tot lot just across the street.
The other question I had, is the playground equipment covered in the budget of the library, or is that something that Parks and Rec's going to have? I become very, very concerned about that. I mean, I know you had to do a lot of changes in order to get to the budget of the building construction itself. And so if we're going to make other recommendations, I would like to, but I think we would have to tie those recommendations to other sources of funding to do it. Now, the next question I'll have is, groundbreaking is intended to happen later this summer, I believe. How does the construction of the library itself correspond to things that have to happen on the playground?
We're keeping ADA access, and we're actually kind of did a workaround plan, early utilities plan, that tries to keep the existing playground as operable as long as possible. So
If some recommendations come from us that is going to increase any large degree, because there have been real efforts to keep the costs down, and so there have been changes in the plan to do that. And I know I haven't been involved in that, but I know that's been going on. It seems to me if we're going to make recommendations that are going to substantively increase the cost, we have to recommend that other sources of funding need to be found to do that, because I think when that happens, and what happens to the library may be impacted as well, and I have a major concern about that.
I want to chime in real quick. So, and unfortunately, Maureen isn't here tonight, as I said, but she could potentially follow up with this and clarify some of the budgetary questions or potential concerns. But again, the reason that the playground is being funded by the library project is because the library project is causing the playground currently to be deconstructed, and as you know, we have to move it to make way for the planned pathways and so forth. So that's kind of where it's at. So I think the understanding is essentially to provide a replacement that's kind of similar to what we've got, and so adding on to that, we'd have to have some discussions with Maureen and her team, and
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
if we're adding on to the point that it's going to actually impact the construction of the library, we need to really look for other funding to do it. I mean, there's some kind of base funding that's in here, and what we add on, I think we should look for funding from other sources to do it.
and right now we are carrying the plan as you see in the library construction estimate, and we are within budget currently. But we have been making, cuts along the way. So, but this is not one of them. And I think none of these are really being, we have options. Parks Department has given us their recommendation. We've heard from the McLaughlin neighborhood, and so we're here just presenting the facts.
Okay, anything else before we move along here? Any other comments?
I just want to say, I might
Roger.
have, I want to, maybe I gave the wrong date for that as being the December 4th. Do you remember when we voted on the last vote for this? It was after the joint meeting.
I'll look that up.
It was after that.
I'll let you know. You can.
It was December 4th, because that was our neighborhood meeting.
I know we gave our recommendation to the city.
I just want to say, with all due respect, I think I looked at that replay this afternoon, and so I think the events that I put in there were actually the way they happened. I mean, I'm not.
Okay. Other comments? Then, Scott, we have some people that would like to comment on the
So-
library issue.
I'll, two at a time, I guess we can call folks up, and then one person can go and one can be waiting in the wings there. And these are in no particular order. I just got a stack of comment cards. And if you haven't signed up and you wish to speak, would you please fill out a comment card? So Janine Offutt, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, and Delpha Powell, if you want to come up.
Welcome, and please recite your name and then in any order that you choose.
I'm Janine Offutt,
Thank you.
and my main concern is about the safety material that's being used. There's a lot of chemicals in society right now. There's about 80,000 chemicals produced and used daily in America, and only about 200 of them have been tested. And after about 30 years of environmental health studies, it shows that chemicals are playing a large role in many diseases and disorders, including leukemia, brain cancer, and other childhood cancers, breast cancer, asthma, learning and developmental disabilities, and difficulties in conceiving. And so I would really appreciate to have natural materials in place. It might be a bit of a hassle, but I think it's, in the long run, a lot safer than materials that potentially could be off-gassing. And you can smell it, you know you're taking chemical molecules into your body. And I'd much rather take my grandchildren there and be playing on bark chips myself. Other than that, I talked to a lot of people in the neighborhood, and there's a concern about way too much concrete.
Too much what?
Concrete.
Oh, concrete,
Not enough
okay.
grass. So, not it.
Okay, thank you very much.
My name
Your
is
turn.
Delpha Powell. I live at 819 6th Street. I moved here 23 years ago with my husband, Tim, and our 2 daughters. And the reason we bought our house half a block away was because of the swing set. So I have, yes, an emotional attachment to that swing set. And if it has to be replaced, I certainly would want the historic nature of it to be maintained so that it is that same shape. I like the idea that when you look in the park, you don't have a lot of clutter, which is kind of like when you see the top park, and it's great because the kids play across from my yard. I hear them all the time, and they're having a great time. And the plastic slide for young children, it is important. But for just the beauty and the nature of the historic, I don't know if we have any other historic park in all of Oregon City that's quite as charming as the Carnegie Park. And I'd love to just not have it cluttered with a lot of things that don't seem to fit. The metal slide, my girls were going on that metal slide just about every day for as long as they grew up there. I never remember it being so hot. Is there a way maybe to put a tree someplace where it would shade? I think we talked about that at the neighborhood meeting, so that would shade the slide. And as far as being burned, it is sad. I mean, of course you want your children to be safe. It's maybe part of parents' responsibility to be aware of those things too. So maybe a small sign, slide can be hot in hot weather. I don't know. But anyway, I know that a lot of work goes into this, but I do feel like as a long-term resident of the neighborhood, I'd really like to see as much maintained as possible with the swings and the slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And the next couple here are Francesca and Kimberly.
Welcome.
Hi.
Recite your name, please.
My name is Kimberly Walsh. I live a few blocks from Carnegie Library. I have a couple concerns with the current library park plans that I would like to bring to your attention. First, as you know, one of the reasons that the two-story building was recommended by you and chosen by the City Commission was to minimize the impact to the park. I feel that the current plan adds too much concrete, thus shrinking the size of the park further. I would suggest leaving the grass area around the spray fountain that is currently there. Taking out the grass around the spray pool and adding pavers, small trees, and grates are likely to cause problems in the future. Small trees do not do well surrounded by concrete, nor do they do well where children play. Children like to shake those small trees. As someone who has walked 7th Street picking up trash, I can tell you that the metal grates collect trash and are hard to clean out. Grates do not belong in a park space where curious young children like to explore by putting things into holes. I think they could be a hazard. Leaving the grass area would minimize the look and feel of all the new concrete and provide more area to play and sit. My second concern has to do with moving the play equipment and replacing the slide and swing set. When the playground equipment was updated approximately 11 years ago, the neighborhood felt strongly that the equipment was to be compatible with the historic nature of the neighborhood. We did not want any bright colors, as little plastic as possible, and as much natural material as possible. Today, most members of the neighborhood association continue to feel very strongly about using historically compatible materials. Having a plastic slide and a rubber surface does not fit with our historic neighborhood. I have other concerns regarding the use of plastic slides. I feel that they can easily be vandalized because they're easy to carve into if you go up to Eastham. They can also get hot, and I've also read accounts online about kids being burned on them. And they're not safe for children with hearing implants due to the buildup of static electricity. I have even greater concerns about the use of rubber mats under the play equipment. The rubber mats are made from recycled tires. Recycled tires are made of many toxic chemicals. The safety of using this material has not been well researched. And if you look into that, it's interesting because the EPA was assigned to get rid of the tires out of the landfill. So they got them to be in the playgrounds, but they haven't done a lot of research on it. There are some studies that show concerns regarding children ingesting, touching, and inhaling toxic chemicals from the recycled tires. Until more research is done, why take the chance? Rubber mats get hot in the sun and can burn feet. Rubber mats have not shown to be safer for impact falls. One article I read said, out of 32 playgrounds surfaced in recycled tires that the researchers in California looked at, only 10 met that state's 2007 standard for head impact safety to reduce brain injury and other serious trauma in children who fall while playing. In contrast, all 5 surfaces made of wood chips met the safety standard. Rubber mats are more prone to vandalism and may curl on the corner edges, especially if they're not all one mat, but the tiles, because individual tiles can curl. And then you do have the maintenance issue. I think I also read that if you have debris from the trees that fall, you're also going to have a maintenance issue because that has to be cleared out. So I urge you to consider the historic integrity of the site, the impact of the park, and the safety of our children when making your recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi,
Next.
I'm Francesca Antone at 123 High Street. I have been around Oregon City since 1978, and I'm going to start with a question, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the old and about the new. And my question, which I think is a really important question that hopefully this group and the people who are putting the Parks Foundation together ask themselves every day, and that is, why, as we move forward, do we need to be constantly eroding our experience of nature, peace, and play in our commons? I think it's a good question, and I think there's lots of research
and thinking and history that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that we keep blowing it every time. Well, no, we don't. There are people doing really positive things, but I want to speak to you, Kathleen Baker, first, because I'm a mom too, and my children were born in 1980, 1982, and 1984. And I lived 8 miles out of town on a farm, and I also worked part-time at the library. But I can tell you that every week for over 10 years, my kids came with me in a beat-up old VW bus, and we came to the library. And I also filled up the bus with other kids, too. And I brought them to the library, and they played in that park, rain or shine. We never had an accident. All those years, kids growing up. I helped run carnivals in that park when there was still a big tree. I guess that's the east side of the building, or the south side of the building, I guess it is. And where there were 50 to 100 kids playing in that park during a carnival. A lot of confusion, a lot of joy, and we never had any horrible accidents on the equipment. That's the old thing I want to talk, and there's lots of really good thinking about what safety is and what it isn't, and how we're raising our kids with regards to safety, and maybe we're making some mistakes. The other thing I want to talk about is the new. It makes me really upset to see that the people who are actually doing their homework are the citizens of this neighborhood. Every time I come to an advisory committee, the people who have done their homework are people like Kimberly and Denise and Jesse. All these people are coming with really useful information. What I heard from city staff today is actually not a result of homework, I'm sorry, but is hollow. Because when you look at the progressive playgrounds that are being built today, for all ages, not just the little ones and not just the big ones separately, but for all ages, they're including far more natural environments. And I'll tell you why. Because in fact, the research internationally that's been done over the last 10 years really intensely shows that there are far fewer children accidents in a natural environment than in an artificial one. So do your homework, please. I am just so dismayed by this. I hear an argument that, we need more concrete because more people are coming to the library, so of course we need more concrete. That's just nonsense. Why can't people who come to this library walk in on a more narrow path? We have 2 entranceways. Why can't they walk in and see more nature as they come to the library and leave it? They can be up on the 2nd story and see more nature as the seasons change. That is just a hollow argument to say that because more people are coming, we need more concrete. I'm sorry, but that's just not true.
Would you please
Yes, I'm going to wrap it up. So I hope that this gets tabled because I think more homework needs to be done, and I think more soul searching about what the heck our values are. This park's been here for a long time. Hopefully it'll be here for a long time in the future. And I was just reading through the stuff in the back, my last comment. I saw the list of all the things that need to be done in our parks. There was no budget with that list, but I heard it's around $2 million. And number 3 on your Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee says review deferred maintenance and park infrastructure needs and explore funding solutions. And I'm going to encourage each one of you to go to the City Commission meeting and ask the City Commission why they need to spend $3.2 million on one intersection next to the proposed new police station that is already fairly well controlled with the traffic control it has, and we don't have $2 million to bring our parks up to speed so that they can be maintained properly, I would like all of us to go to a city commission meeting and ask them how that can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any others, Scott?
We do. I've got 2 more signed up. These are the last 2, unless there's anybody else that hasn't been that hasn't turned in a card. Denise and Bill.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
I know most of you. My name's Bill Daniels. I live here at 524 High Street, corner of the by the elevator. I've been here 40 years now. So I've seen some changes, most of them good. I was on the advisory committee, the Citizen Advisory Committee, when we replaced the equipment that's there currently on the playground equipment. And I was asked to attend because I spent 25 years in Portland parks in operations, and part of my duty was playground maintenance. So I have a fair bit of knowledge of what works and what doesn't in Portland parks. And one of the things I advocated for was to continue the metal apparatus that we use for the swings and the slides. They're currently in good shape today. They don't wear, if it's good grade metal, which we got good grade metal for those tubes, the structure. It resists vandalism. Practically none happens. The only thing it really wears on the swing seats are the actual seats themselves. Now, and some of the grommets eventually on friction when it continues, but they can be checked and are checked, or should be checked twice a year to see if there's wear. There's lubrication points. So those can, in fact, we could use those again. We could just pick them up, turn them around, and put them back in the ground if we needed to. I mean, they're just in good shape. They'll last for a long time. They're a better maintenance item than plastic. Plastic is subject to vandalism. Kids like to carve things up with knives. The only way to get those grooves out of the slide is to put a sander on it, and it's kind of a battle. One day it's there and one day it's gone. The graffiti, that when somebody takes a spray can paint to that plastic, it absorbs in, especially when the sun gets a hold of it. And the only way you get that out is to paint over it or continue to use sanding on it to try to mute it. There's no comparison in maintenance costs between the two pieces, as well as the durability. So I'm just, we had metal equipment there that we replaced that had been there for a better part of 20 to 30 years, and we replaced it with more metal. And I hope that we can continue to use that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening again. I'm Denise McGriff, and I have the privilege of being the chairperson of the McLaughlin neighborhood. I have lived in the city for 27 years now. I want to just take you back a little bit. We worked very closely with the park staff at the time to put the Tot Park in. We had some of the same discussions that we're having now about the plastic. We felt that that area, because it was for smaller children, could have plastic, but that we were very adamant at the time, and I was not the chair then, but just a member, that we wanted to keep the playground equipment in the park, as Bill has specified and everyone else, the way it is. I cannot tell you how strongly I feel about the historic district. I would not have moved to this district if I hadn't cared about it. I live in a historic property. I think this is one of the best neighborhoods in the city, although we have other fabulous neighborhoods as well. But this neighborhood is where we began. It is very important that we maintain the historic integrity, not only of our neighborhood, but this park. This is a park, as Doug said, dedicated by Dr. John McLaughlin. It is not a library with a park around it. It is a park that happens to have a library in it. And that's one of the things that we think we have forgotten. I do want to tell you about the fact that we have been working very closely with Maureen's team. Unfortunately, we have not been able to meet with Denise or Scott, which we would like to. We think that there is an ability to have a compromise with regard to this playground. And I opened that up so that we can do that. I sent a copy of an email to Maureen. I didn't realize she was on vacation because her out of office didn't come up saying, "Hi, I'm on vacation." But I also copied Scott. And I said, we were supposed to have a meeting. We still have time before Thursday. So I don't know if Scott knew about that, but I did send it to him as well. So I've got a couple of points that I want to make you aware of. We have been, again, as I said, we have been working very closely with Joan and her team. We have not, unfortunately, again, had an opportunity to meet with park staff, nor have we had an opportunity to meet with Kurt, but again, his time is expensive, so I get that. So we're going through Maureen. I mentioned at our neighborhood meeting that I had been doing some research with the U.S. Access Board, and that is a federal governmental agency that involves ADA access and those sorts of things with regard to playgrounds. I have been researching playground equipment. There is nothing in the ASTMA standards that says you have to have plastic equipment. It just has to be safe. So that was one of the things I found. Some of the other stuff that I found is that my concern about the tile surface or the plastic square surface is not exactly the same as some of our other members, but I understand where they're coming from. What Ms. Greenwald from that U.S. Access Board said that the rubberized plastic surface, number one, it should not be in any way using any shredded material, rubber material. That is dangerous. It does off-gas, all of that stuff. The surface that needs to be there for the playground, any playground, needs to meet the ASTM standards. Engineered wood fiber is acceptable and allowed. She said that plastic tile-like surfaces are made that look like grass. I haven't been able to find that online yet, but I'm still looking. I was also told that the biggest problem with the rubberized tile, and I said this at the meeting, and sorry Kurt wasn't there, is that we've just looked, you're going to be looking at a list of maintenance. My biggest concern about using that surface is that we as a city will not be able to maintain it adequately. The staff there was adamant to me that the tile surface has to be properly installed and maintained yearly. If it is not, it's like we've thrown money down a rat hole. That's my big concern about that. We're struggling. I'm glad that somebody's coming up with the Parks Foundation because that will help us. The other thing I want to bring up is that we have agreed time and time again to work with our staff because we're going to continue to work with them. We have two of our members back there who are working on the McLaughlin Promenade. We do the 7th Street cleanup. We're not trying to be in an adversarial position with the city or their staff because we respect them. So we want to work with them to try to come to a compromise. One of the things that was left out of Maureen's memo that I was a little bit concerned about, and that's why I sent the memo, is that she forgot to mention that, could you go, I don't know who's controlling this, but can you go to the slide that shows the safety zones for the slide? I don't know who gets to do that, but that's...
The mouse is up there, so we have to...
Kurt's going to help. So I have some material from our April 2nd meeting where the project team came, and one of the things we talked about, does this have like the little red light on it somewhere? So you see where the slide is and where the tree is? So we said, why can't we move the slide a little bit forward? And we were scaling it out. We all had, some of us had our little rulers, to bring the slide more in line with shading for the tree. And we were told, and I looked at my notes again last night, that's a great idea, we're going to propose that. So that's a little bit of a compromise there. If people are concerned about the slide and that it might get hot, well, everything gets hot over there. Even that concrete in the splash park. If it gets hot enough, that surface gets a little warm.
And maybe let me interrupt for just
Go
a
ahead.
second. One thing I did leave out of my discussion is the parks maintenance. In Portland Parks, we always put our slides so they either face north or east. Keeps the direct sun off of it. Takes care of that problem right away.
So that's, again, so maybe moving it a
This
little
is facing
forward,
north.
still within the safety zone, and that we kind of resolved that problem. So one of the things I want to suggest is that we have another neighborhood meeting coming up. We did not, this was last month's meeting, was the first meeting we did not have the library park staff, I mean not the park staff, but the library project staff come to our neighborhood meeting. And maybe we should have, because I sent an email a few weeks before to Maureen saying, what's going on with what you're going to present at the PrAC? let's get together, let's have a discussion about it, because I want to come here and say, we have talked with staff, we've been working with the project team, and here's our joint recommendation. I mean, wouldn't that be just awesome? I think that's the way we need to go. And so I'm going to request that you guys delay any decision about the playground, because I don't think it's going to cause the rest of the project not to move forward, so that we can again sit down as neighborhood, staff, project team, and see what we can continue to have a discussion and work out. To me, that is what being a neighborhood association person working with the city is all about. There's some give and there's some take. But let's continue to have the discussion. So that is my request to you, and that is my request to staff, and that is my request to the project team. We are willing, ready, and able to continue to work together in lockstep to bring to you something that we can all live with. Any questions for me?
Sure. I have one question, just as everybody else's probable representative. I guess I'm not hearing any issues with height. So
Well,
can we
we
take
re-
that off the table?
No, we really still would like the 10-foot swing, because we think we have enough room.
Yeah, let me comment on that as Parks Maintenance and Playground Equipment Specialist. That slide that we currently have was copied after 3 of them that are in Portland Park System. They're a huge magnet for kids to come to play. They come to for that slide in all the different parks that we use them in because of the height. And so I just want to make that point that was one of the reasons why we did get a 10-foot slide in there, is because kids, they don't even mind waiting in line to get up that ladder to go down because of the joy.
Well, it's concerts in the park. Check
So
out the lines.
That's why I probably missed that opportunity to speak about height, but certainly I think that's important, especially with the swings as well, for the adults that can use that in the off hours.
Well, they use them in the on hour. So part of the memo is correct. We said, okay, if we can't get the fall zone for the slide, if we can move it forward, get it out of the sun, we'd be willing to compromise with an 8-foot slide. But we definitely feel very strongly about having a 10-foot swing set. I mean, again, we have the tot park for the little kids under 6, but man, I said at Planning Commission and at other meetings, I go over there during the day, at night. It's just nice. It's a good place for me to sort of think about life, the universe, and everything, and sit there and swing. And I'm over there when I do my neighborhood walks. There's people over there all the time. Teenagers, moms, dads, grandma. I even saw somebody's grandma over there the other night when I walked by. And it's just a joy, because I know people are enjoying it and they're using it. So that's kind of where we're coming from.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
Any other, Scott?
No.
that it?
Actually, Kimberly Walsh had signed up 2 cards, and I'll just give you this information, Mr. Chair, and you can do what you want with it, to speak. She spoke earlier, but signed up also to speak separately on behalf of another person, so that apparently isn't able to be here. So that's up to you to allow that.
You have the written statement?
No. It's just to speak on behalf of that person.
I think we can entertain it, can't we? Down to 3 minutes?
If you can make it short, you're welcome. And I hope it's not repetition of others. We've heard an awful lot of input. And
I just read it again, and it is saying the same thing.
If
So
there's anything
I
new-
won't read it. I'll just let you know that there is another person that has the same
Okay.
concerns.
Thank you very much.
Did you give him the written document?
I will
Go ahead and present that as part of the record.
I will email it. It's from Louisa Godnew.
Okay, thank you.
I've got that name on the card, so I'll note that was similar types of concerns.
Okay, we've had an awful lot of input, and I'm always the one that's concerned about next steps, so let me ask Scott what our next steps ought to be. We've had a lot of input, a lot of suggestions, a lot of ideas.
Actually, I think the decision, what we want to recommend, our decision of us, not necessarily of the staff, has been suggested we table it. I don't have any objection to tabling it, but I think if we table it, if we have specific concerns that the neighbors have brought out, we should include that in the motion to actually have staff pursue those recommendations. So we can make a motion to table, but we can include actually some specifics that we would like to have seriously considered.
I have a question about the timeline, because the idea of redesigning to move the slide forward into the shaded tree area, does that affect the construction start date for the library?
I would have to call on the project consultants to answer that question, so either Kurt or Joan.
No. As long as we're still fitting it within our kind of outline for the play area, if we need to subtly adjust the location of these pieces of equipment, it wouldn't affect any construction start date at all.
We table this to stay in that box to redesign, then that's something that's doable.
It is. I think we've been studying this, and we understand this is a very important issue to the neighborhood, to parks. I think we are eager to move forward with it, but we understand that if we need to study things or provide more material, then certainly we're open to do that.
I've got a question that I think you brought up, was that picture doesn't reflect the vegetative area currently considered. Is that true?
In the plaza, no, it doesn't.
I think when we do the tabling, I think we would like to see the picture. I mean, we've all several of us have mentioned, including myself, the paved area, and I think if that doesn't reflect it, we probably ought to get a different rendering of what that picture is.
I apologize for the rendering. This was done when we had tree grates and pavers, and we no longer have tree grates and pavers in that area. It's all natural vegetation.
I think that'd be helpful.
Are you talking about the circle around the
Yes.
spray park?
Yes.
Thank you.
With one exception, we're still planning on making the cut through right here, so that you can utilize this as a way to access the park when the spray park is not on, to activate it in the months that it's not being used. So there'll just be a path right there. So instead of entering and having to walk all the way, you can walk in this way, you can walk in that way, kind of thing, because right now it just has two entrances.
Any other comments?
Not for them, but for us. I think I agree with Doug. Number one, I absolutely think we need to table it. I think for me, for the purpose of, for several things, I would like to see the numbers. I'm a budget person. And so I would like to see the difference in cost between the 8s and the 10 foots in plastic and the 8s and the 10s in metal. I just think of the things I'm required to do at work, and this is less ridiculous than a lot of those things. Sorry if my boss is watching. And secondly is I'm trying to understand how to compromise and where the compromises should be from the neighborhood association. So if they meet between now and our next meeting, I would like, in order of preference, height, play surface, as in the play material, so metal, plastic, and then the third element would be the base, whether it's wood or rubber. And where do those fall into the priority? Because we may not be able to do all three, but if we do one, I want to do the right one. Especially if I'm sitting here agreeing with the same thing.
It may well be that the surface, when referring to chips or plastic, and maybe it's more of a maintenance issue cost than it is actually a construction issue.
And then that should be quantified as well.
Yeah, that's
exactly. I mean, I think of photocopiers, and sometimes spending $200 more on a printer at work saves $2,000 over 7 years of toner. So, you know, if your guys are having to go every 2 days versus once a month, quantify it. Let's see it.
Exactly. Other comments? I'd just like to make sure that anything we use is chemical friendly. We heard some comments tonight about some research that people have done regarding the composition of some of the rubberized matting, and we have to be absolutely certain that it's hazard-free. So
That's a great point. When I think of going to Babies R Us, they tend to show things on the packaging a little differently than other places. You always hear a news story about something that came over from China that's not appropriate. So is this stuff coming from China, or someplace here where it's certified? Just help us. And
locally manufactured.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but we can provide some
That'd be great.
additional data.
Great.
Kurt, this picture you put up here with the 10-foot slide, 8-foot slide and the 10-foot swings, can that slide be oriented so it's facing north instead of
It's actually
south?
facing east in that one.
That's facing east?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. I think that if you see, and it gets down to inches sometimes. You see this little, how that kind of comes out. If you move it around the other side, it actually encroaches into that zone, which we can't do. So that's the reason why we have it oriented in that direction.
that's the direction we wanted, isn't it?
Well, the other direction would be half kind of northwest a little bit. So it might be, either or is probably works out fine. This might be a little bit better.
Okay.
And this one with the 10-foot swing is showing that you're losing the planting strip to the west, where the tree was in the other one. So
We don't need a motion to table this. We don't have an action item required either.
But I think there's enough direction for staff to understand that we're going to bring this back to the next meeting.
Very good.
And I don't know if Kurt has any follow-up comments that would be helpful at this time. We'll compile the concerns or questions that have been brought up by PRAC and by the citizens that spoke. But is there anything that you wanted to follow up on before we go off this topic, Kurt, just in terms of that might be helpful this evening or kind of leading to the discussion later? Or I don't. I mean, a lot of things were brought up, so I don't know.
No, I think I have enough information. I think I understand what you'll all be looking for, and so we can provide that material at the next meeting.
Assuming that, so here's a little bit of the crux here, the conundrum is Maureen is the department director in charge of this project, and I'm assuming that she's going to authorize the consultants to come back at another meeting, or but I can't speak for Maureen. She's literally out of town, not even.
And she reports to you, right?
Pardon me.
And she reports to you.
No, she doesn't.
Oh, I
no,
thought
she's
she
a
did.
she's a department head, just like I am.
Okay.
So, library used to be under my department a few years ago, but that's been. But so I just want. I'm just before we. It's an assumed that we can have these folks come back. I mean, staff will be here obviously, and we can relay information too if that's what's necessary. But I'm not gonna commit Maureen's project resources to the next meeting, not knowing for sure. We'll certainly inquire. So I just want to make.
And I would say
clarification.
I don't. With all due respect, I don't know if I need to see you next month.
Well, thank you.
I mean, to get my answer to those
Commissioner.
questions.
Yeah, I do have to say, no, I think regardless, I think we've, as you may know, we've spent the last 15 years working on parks here at Oregon City, and it's our favorite place to work. We love working with neighbors. We love presenting our ideas to you and collaborating with you. And I think we go into this process really wanting to do the right thing, and as professionals, kind of share our experiences with you. But at the end of the day, we want to sit back and we want to be proud of this project and the play area. So we look forward to seeing you next time.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just one last comment, and I just thought of this. Maybe the other thing that would help, hearing all the comments about the amount of concrete that is showing up, but maybe not, accurately portrayed on the drawings. Is there any way, taking the actual building footprint out of the equation, we could get a calculation of actually the percentage change in the amount of ground cover? Because that really then answers that question. Because looking at, I think part of what's taking us aback a little bit is, we're losing this whole area around where the extra building's sitting, so that's all green area that's now disappearing. So to us, it's, who's used to seeing this kind of big swath of green over this entire square, or most of it, it looks very pale. So if we could get that kind of calculation where maybe it's not quite as much of a change as we think it is, maybe it is, but that would give us at least something a little more concrete. No pun intended.
What we can do is we can overlay the existing path system in that
Yeah.
area, because there is an existing path which
And
goes to
roadway.
to the
And
front
roadway.
way and one over here. So we can give you a diagram that better represents what we're doing and then what's out there right now.
That would be great. Thank you.
Could I add to that current tree canopy versus area versus tree canopy on this? If that's
yes.
possible.
Yes, we can do that.
Great.
But we will be in for permit at that time. We will be in for permit at that time of the next meeting.
Means exactly what?
What does that mean?
Our drawings will be complete.
It means that's the end of the changes. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, we can do the drawings to illustrate. It's not the end of changes. Permit is review again as well. And we can select the type of slide, the type of surface, type of swing. We can do that after the fact. I'm just
I
not
think
sure we're not going to change.
The essential, the way I understand it, what you're talking about is putting in for the land use permits, that essentially the footprint's got to be what it is.
Right.
There can be a selection of some nuances of things that Joan just referenced, but it's got to be, we're not going to substantially change the layout or what's going to be in the playground.
We've done
at that point.
all stormwater calcs, all that kind of stuff has been done. Landscaping has been done as we go in for permit in about 10, 12 days just to stay on construction schedule.
The materials you use there for surface, is that part of the permit, the specific material?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It'll all get
Yeah.
reviewed. Fire, life safety, stormwater, public works will review it. Doesn't mean that it can't change and we can't take it in. And depending on what materials or play equipment we use, that'll be more of a change order. And that could be a positive change order or a negative change order. It's just at that point. The
So
project
what's the date
is-
for that?
We submit June 10th.
That's long before our next scheduled meeting.
But we're not
Yeah.
asking you to change the footprint.
Okay.
Yeah, I
that-
think
that's
we'll
right.
be fine.
And I haven't heard
I think the point needed to be
recommendations
made,
to that
but yeah, I think we'll be fine.
Okay.
It's just understand that we can't all of a sudden say, well, let's just completely revamp this
Can't
thing.
go back to a one-story layout.
Yeah, we're. So
I haven't heard
Gotta
any.
go now.
if I can just quickly summarize for you, and then tell me, board members, if I'm on track or off here. We're gonna put this on the next agenda. We would hope that probably at that point we're gonna need a recommendation from the committee of some type. And again, keep in mind, and I don't mean this to sound in any way derogatory, but your job is advisory capacity. You need to make a recommendation, and then what happens with that from there, it moves through the chain of command, so to speak, or whatever. But especially on playgrounds and anything parks related, your recommendation carries substantial weight and is important, and will be strongly listened to and recognized. So it's an important decision. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion attached to this site, not just with the playground, but just in general. And I think some of that may be kind of a little bit, it's connected to this discussion regardless of whether we want it to be or not. But we will bring back some follow-up to these points that have been brought up in terms of the questions that you need to make decisions, and hope to inform you that you can make a recommendation. Sounds like Kurt is prepared to put some information together, and whether he's here at the next meeting or not, we'll present that information. But I also want you to know, just as kind of my final comment, that I don't appreciate one of my staff people are yelled at and pointed at in a meeting, and her professionalism is questioned, nor mine for that sake, but I can live with that. But I'd like to keep this conversation civil, and we've been nothing but that, and we don't intend to be anything besides professional. From the standpoint of I'm speaking for staff, not speaking for the board. Denise and I have probably 35 or 40 years of professional experience between the two of us in a number of different agencies and capacities, and we do our homework, we research things. We're a public agency. We are bound by a lot of different things to seek things that are in the most in the best public interest, and our recommendations are based on largely those things, understanding that there are going to be different opinions about that. The fact that this playground is going to be changed, not by our choice, but because of the project that is overriding that, we have then been asked to provide our professional opinions, and that's exactly what we've done. Denise, more so than anybody in my department, has been engaged in that process, and we make those professional opinions based on our experience, which is, I think, fairly significant, but also by industry standards, which are very easy for us to bring back to you and show you what we're talking about, and that's what we'll do. We can't install equipment. There are national playground safety standards that we're not going to put something in that doesn't follow those standards, that hasn't been researched and hasn't been approved by the federal government through different safety things. So none of what we've brought to you as a recommendation has been done so lightly, and I want you to know that, and I want you to understand that. And again, we're going to maintain our professionalism, but I hope that the conversation remains civil, because that, that's my desire. So
there was nothing, I assume, the commissioner said that gave that indication?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. It's very difficult to control public comment.
Yes, sir.
And
I understand that.
And when somebody does that, they're not forwarding their cause to the body they're speaking to. In fact, if anything, they're undermining their case.
Thanks for your comments, Scott. I couldn't agree with you more.
When is the next meeting?
Our next meeting?
I'll tell you.
What is our next meeting?
I'll tell you right here. It's June 25th.
June 25th.
If I might take a second just to make sure that I understood the items we were talking about, looking at the height of the equipment, material of the playground, the material of the surface, were the primary things? Was there something else?
That includes the any chemical composition of the material.
Material of the surface, yes.
Yeah.
So you didn't have any other outstanding questions to make sure you're comfortable with what you need to do, Kurt, did you?
I think what I'm hearing is we're focusing on the play area. We will bring just some support materials to so you can better understand what's out there and what's not, and the tree canopy.
Well, the support materials might imply that you're going to recommend no matter what you put forward here. I hope that's not what you're going to be bringing, because I think there was a serious, among many of us, there's a serious concern about the material that's going to be used on the play equipment.
On the play equipment. Oh, yes. No, I am talking about that. I was talking about the concrete that you had asked about before, the amount of concrete.
Versus existing minus the building.
Yeah, okay.
And just the final comment from just thinking ahead to the next meeting, so when you receive your materials in advance or what have you, I want the committee to know, I want you, the board members, to know that our job is to make staff recommendations, and our consultants have also given recommendations which are supported by staff. If the board has a different opinion, that's okay, and you're welcome to do that. We're just giving you the best information that we can, and we'll provide supporting information as to why that's a little bit more detailed than what you've received. But I want you to be comfortable knowing that if you if you have a different direction or something that we're not going to take that personally or anything. So
I'm very comfortable with what's been presented by staff and you. My only concern is if this was in any of the other 5 or 7 neighborhoods, we would have just rubber stamped it and gone. But people came up and said they want something different. So I just need to hear why. I mean, that's our job, is to weigh the pros and cons then, and then go forward. I have no idea where I'll fall next month.
I think we should move on.
Thank you.
Next item is consideration of our annual goals. And I would like to thank Sean for his work on this. We've all had ideas and expressed those in the past 2 or 3 meetings as kind of single issue items, and Sean took some time and tried to collapse those into more or broader statements. And you all have a copy of those in front of you, so I'd like to open the discussion, see if there's any recommendations for change or additions or corrections.
I think, first of all, the list we have is fine. I brought up the issue of the connectivity on trails and so forth. I think that'll be an ongoing discussion. I sent out a couple sentences, what I've been thinking about, but the intent was not to, for one thing, the commission has already set its goals for the year, and I think, and part of that reflected goals that were set forward before the commission met. And I had no intention of throwing anything in there that wasn't consistent with those goals. I just I wanted to put that as one of my high priorities as we go ahead. But I think what's written here and the recognition of those is sufficient.
Any other comments?
I would want to bring up an issue so you don't have to, but you brought up a topic before this meeting that I think we all should consider, and I think it's a great idea. One of my heartaches with this is we spend too much time on it and half the year's gone before we adopt it, and then next year we go through the same thing. It happens year after year after year. The city commission has moved many things like this to a biennial or every 2 years, and they just set their 2015 to 17, and so my recommendation would be if we go ahead and adopt these, that we make this in line with theirs as far as time.
Any comments about that? I think that's a good idea. So I think what you're saying is these ought to be our 2015-17 goals. And then, if need be, in a year or so, we can make any revisions.
2015, 2016, there'll be a new commission in 2017. They'll be looking at their goals, so.
15 to 16.
15 to 16. You said it's 17.
Well, I said 17 because I'm reading up there, but maybe that's wrong.
Well, let me clarify.
Those are budget years.
Fiscal calendar. Those are based on the city's
6 months into
July 1 to June 30th.
So it is 2 years. It's just on the fiscal calendar.
So 2015, 2016 goals for practice.
Yeah, essentially that's what you're talking about.
2015, 2016. Any comments on that?
I so move that we adopt these as our goals.
Second.
Move and second that we adopt the goals for 2015-16. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. They are unanimously accepted or endorsed or passed.
And just clarifying, as you move through that quickly on the motion part, you're talking about the revised set that was sent to you after your original thing.
Yes.
So
And-
we're
and
good
it-
with that. I just wanted to
We
make
have the
sure.
printed copy here
Yeah.
in front of us
Yeah.
today.
So that will be, I wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
understood you correctly. So great.
Just for final comment, I went through all of the proposed goals we had last month and to see how they fit into these refined goals, and they do.
Last year.
They're all included. Anyway, so that's passed. Next item is annual report to the City Commission. Last year, Mike and I did that. I presented the goals for the year, and Mike presented the work plan and the accomplishments for the year. So let me ask Scott, do we have kind of a proposed timeline for the presentation yet?
I think at the last meeting you discussed this. You were saying that you would prefer to wait until you had adopted your goals, which you just did, so that you had the ability to take those forward with you in that discussion. So I guess what I would suggest is, as soon as is possible for the chair or whoever else might be presenting, just working back a couple of weeks out from the meeting dates, I can get you on most any agenda with the commission. They meet the first and third Wednesday of every month. At this point, let's see, probably going to miss the first meeting in June. You could do the second meeting, or you could push it to the first meeting in July if you're more comfortable having a little time to prepare, or whatever you would want to do. I'm not looking at a calendar to give you exact dates. I'm sure we could pull those out.
3rd and the 17th, because it's first and third Wednesday, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
3rd or the 17th, and the 17th would be much more favorable for me, and as vice chair, I'd be happy to attend.
Good.
I'm
17th of June?
17th of June.
17th of June.
I'm bombarded with meetings. It's school board stuff
You said June
happens
or
the first
July?
and second week. June.
Why don't we do the 17th of June?
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be your preference. I will work towards getting you on that agenda. Let me just ask you, though, if there is a problem for whatever reason, occasionally there will be an agenda that's so full that it would be recommended that we push things out or something like that. If that's the case, would July 1st work for you as the next option?
Yes.
It's okay with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So
Okay.
I'll confirm Bob and Sean. You want me to essentially, and then we'll give the rest of the committee a heads up when it's going to be done. So
If I
Close
might,
will be there.
I think it is always more impressive to the commission when you have as many people from the advisory body there, just basically showing their faces. So
Great.
Great.
Good advice.
All the help.
So, Scott, would you email everybody,
yes,
just as a group? And
we'll do.
Next item, Glen Oak Road and Filbert Run Master Parks Plan Process Update.
And I recognize where we're at on times because that first item took a while. So there's some update type of things. I'll just let you know right now. I'm going to move very quickly through, and I'll leave the questions to you if you have them, and if not, we'll just move through them. So the update on this is that we presented the two parks master plans to the City Commission at their May 12th work session, and they seem to be pretty well accepted, and there was no significant discussion about changes. There was some question. The only thing that kind of registered as significant was there was some discussion about the potential, should it be necessary, to add a parking lot at the Filbert Run Park site by at least one or a couple of the commissioners, and we're kind of leaving that to that if that became necessary, we could possibly look at that, but we really are encouraging not doing at that site because it's a small neighborhood park and we think we've got enough street parking. So that was the only thing that was really discussed significantly, but basically the commission overall was, I thought, quite supportive of the two master plans. And at this point, from a process standpoint, we really have basically two plans. We're going to ask Mr. Lango, who worked on these projects, as you know, to provide us the final documentation that gives you the visual master plan plus the report that kind of describes everything that went into it. And those will, in essence, be our working master plans until such time that we move towards a development plan when we're ready to build. So that's that. And then, the next one, actually, these next two or three are just kind of, I'll just keep rolling on these here for you. Let's see, Willamette Falls Legacy Project, this is the standing update. The selection of the design team for the Riverwalk schematic design is nearly complete. There were three finalist firms, and I think I might have mentioned this at the last meeting, that there were basically some world-class designers that had made it to the finalist category. The three firms were interviewed recently by the selection team, and a winning firm will be announced in the very near future. I can't announce that tonight to you, but I think stay tuned on that. There's additional information about the finalists on the website, the rediscoverthefalls.com website. And I would tell you that the project, the design process which I think is supposed to be about an 18-month-long process, is anticipated to commence in July, and that there will be a robust public input process to help design the Riverwalk. PRAC will be given the opportunity for that. I'll keep you apprised of that process and how you might provide input in the public process.
I was on the selection committee, so if you have any questions that I can't answer about it, I'd be happy to tell you. I can't tell you who won, but I can tell you any other stuff about it.
Has a decision been made, actually, or not?
I believe so, but there's
Okay.
not going to be an
No,
official
that's fine.
announcement
Yeah.
yet.
Keep going, Scott.
Is there a meeting tomorrow night?
I know that the governor is coming to town tomorrow, and that there's going to be a private tour with a select few people of the site.
From 1 to 3 o'clock.
With the
tomorrow.
governor, yeah,
But
but
it's
you.
invitation
It's an
Yeah,
invitation
only,
event.
right. So, I wasn't
See you,
invited.
Mike.
You got it, Mike.
You know,
See you next month, Mike.
Yeah.
if people on these committees haven't been on a tour, you can work that out. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
you can work. I think
I don't
we've
wanna go
discussed that
State
before.
Brown.
That
no, not on that tour, but on Fridays the planning commission, the planning staff organize tours, and if we want to have a tour of our group, we can do that. Yeah.
We've been on the riverside, but I myself haven't been through the actual.
Yeah, you can actually walk through and out to the viewing platform. We can look at that if that's something you want to do down the road. The next item is F, the pickleball group request. This is just an update for you. At your last meeting, you discussed this pretty extensively, and I'll just let you know that since then, staff, we met with the group at Hillendale Park, which was your recommendation, and to review the potential to accommodate the pickleball activity on those on the tennis court at that site. It looked like a really good option when we met out there. The pickleball folks were very excited about it. I think they were apprehensive until they got onto the thing, and they said this would probably work really well, which is what we thought, but they seemed hesitant in our meetings. But then once they got out there, they seemed very excited about it. So we're pressing forward. We've got some things that we're working on to do some sort of temporarily put some lines down that could become permanent. They're going to put some equipment boxes they will keep their stuff in and that can lock up and be used. And they're already we're working towards getting some of these improvements made on the court in June at their expense, not the city's cost. Other than we're just going to clean, we're going to power wash so they can paint and accommodate them to put things on our surface and lock up their lockbox onto a fence or whatever. And then beginning in later June, and I'll let you know as these things go on, but they're going to start doing some events where they invite people to come out and try it out or check it out or whatever. So that's all in process. It's moving quickly. And so there's something that PRAC can hang your hat on and say, yay, good accomplishment. So
Well done.
The Mount Pleasant School purchase and Barclay Park agreement conditions. This was added to your agenda as a request from one of the committee members, and I think it was an excellent suggestion just to give you an update. So the city purchased, as you probably almost certainly know, the city purchased the Mount Pleasant School site from the school district in December of 2014. So in the last 5 months. And that, of course, is purchased for the future location of our police department and potentially some other municipal purposes. The parks piece of this, where the question came in, is that the purchase and sale agreement contains a revisionary interest clause regarding Barclay School, which goes back to the 1800s. Here comes our history again in our city, that existed in the Barclay School deed or title, that if it ever changed use from the school, it had to be reverted back to the city and this type of thing. At any rate, this purchase and sale agreement contained a clause to basically alleviate that consideration, but in exchange, the city received some monetary value for that was deducted from the purchase price. And in this clause situation, and it's also in our purchase and sale agreement, it also included a direction that, it must be done, that over many years probably, the school had encroached kind of down the hill. If you know, Barclay Park is right down the property below that, going down the hill is the city's park property, and probably by no intent, or maybe just accident or whatever, but the fence was a fence was put in by the school district or by the preschool that was there, and some playground equipment that encroached our property. There's a map that I gave you that was outlines the highlighted line is the existing fence, and you'll see that there's some it's small, but there's some pieces of equipment in there. There's a property line that goes right through the middle of that. That's where the line is, so you can see how far over into our property some of their stuff had gotten, and we asked that be corrected. And they've got, and it's in the agreement, the purchase and sale agreement. As part of that, it will be corrected by no later than August of 2015. And if it doesn't get fixed, then we have some remedies to do that. So
That's this year.
that's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, that changes.
Any questions about that?
I have some questions about that, if I may.
It's up to the chairman.
I've been on another slip.
Okay.
We can take comments.
You have questions?
Yes, I have questions.
Can you make them quick, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, the one nice thing about Oregon City is that we do have process, and I appreciate the process.
Well,
So my questions regarding, I don't really want to look at that, but that's okay, was I was the land use chair of the McLaughlin neighborhood at the time that this request for the playground equipment came, and I will tell you that you'll have to forgive me because I don't throw things away that belong to the neighborhood. So I went back to my notes, and we had specifically asked the question at that time, was this in Barclay Park? Because nobody had any drawings or anything to scale. So I guess the question is, does this mean that the equipment, they're going to take the equipment with them to their new location, or what's going to happen to the playground stuff? Has that been...
The clause in the agreement says that they shall either move or remove the equipment. So I don't know. That's up to the school.
To the Montessori school?
Mhm.
Okay, so I do want you to know for the record at what we were asked about it. The one thing that I will be doing as chair of the McLaughlin neighborhood is I will be making contact with the school superintendent, because this is zoned residential, and we want to make sure that we are involved in any planning that they do for this building. Again, a historic building. It was actually where my son was going to go to school when we moved into this neighborhood, and I was looking forward to that, and then they closed it. Then he was going to go to Eastham, and they closed that. So we want to make sure that, historic Barclay School still is maintained as a historic building. They could put something else in it, but that's a whole other process for land use.
I can tell you that the school district staff just created a committee dealing with surplus property, a long-term focus on surplus property or new property purchase needs. So that it's far off, but that just conversation.
I was
just
on the
started.
facilities committee back when Barry Rotrock was the board, the superintendent. I was representing the city on that committee, so I have experience with them in their surplus property issues.
Yeah.
So if you comes up again, pass my name along. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate
Sure.
that.
Thank you. And so did you have any other questions on that topic?
Well, just a comment. That's for another body, right, Denise? That's not the purview of this committee. That's the school
No.
district, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's-
I would say as an interest, because whatever they do to that property may affect Barclay Park. That would
Good
be my
point.
only concern. We had
Yeah.
concerns with my father's heart and them being in the park, so we've been talking to the city about that.
Okay, I see the connection. Where are we?
Park Day.
5H.
H, Park Day event, August 7th, 6 p.m., Wesley Park.
You selected the committee. You selected that date as the event date at the last meeting, so that we could at least have a date to publish in the Trail News for the summer, which it is in. And we basically put the same type of activities and information as was there last time. So I don't know that the committee has to do anything about this tonight, but it's probably something that, like we did last year or the last couple of years, we'll want to have a get-together. We'll probably discuss it a little bit further, and then see who's going to be involved doing what. Because, again, I want to make sure you understand for sure that this is your event to kind of put yourself, and talk to the public. And, I mean, with, of course, staff support, but so we want to make sure that you're engaged in that project or that activity. So.
I have a comment. Is that okay?
Sure.
Fine.
Would it be possible to have, include in this year some of the other entities, like information booths on the Riverwalk down below, and the other entities that want to be involved in this and put up booths?
Yeah, like the library might.
Well,
yeah.
I think that would be very appropriate if they have a connection to the parks or the city. That we want to be careful about that, not just turn it into a free for all. But that's clearly what you're talking about.
Well, that
and then
Ermitinger is right now. That's one of our parks, right?
Mm-hmm. That's definitely, yeah.
But you're thinking of some information booths, essentially?
Right. Last year we had an information booth, and it'd be nice to have a few more information booths. It is Parks Day, and so the more we have,
So that's exactly what I was talking about when I said that I think the committee needs to discuss further what the plan is and what you want to do and how you want to do that, because we can help facilitate and make those arrangements for you. I did want to note, Mike Mitchell I think he needed to leave, but he handed me a nice note before he left that said, when we discussed the Park Day event, the Parks Foundation would like to have a presence at that event. Please let the group know. And I think that would be very appropriate, obviously. Yeah. So, there's things like that.
I think last year we had a special planning meeting. Yes. I don't think it was before the regular meeting. It was a special, wasn't it? A special, or was it just before our regular meeting?
I think it was before the meeting. We went out to Rivercrest.
Right. We met at like 6 o'clock at Rivercrest. Made sure we had all the posters and equipment, and then that was a pretty large topic that night. Then,
if we talk about this in June, does that give us enough time to be ready and out by August?
Perfect.
Why don't we do that in June?
And I think based on what Roger's suggestion, if the rest of us agree, which I do, if other groups that Scott or Denise know, like I think the library would be a very perfect candidate to have a table there and describe what they're doing, if they want to.
And when you were talking about the Riverwalk, were you talking about the Legacy Project, Willamette Falls Legacy Project?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so in those cases, we would, if that's what the committee decided you wanted to do, we'd reach out to the library and ask if they wanted to staff, some information at a table, and then we'd reach out to our planning department is leading from the city's standpoint the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, and we'd ask if they would want to come. So we can help facilitate those.
Well, is there enough time if we wait till June to ask these people to do? Is that enough time for them?
I'm suggesting that those invitations, as far as I'm concerned, could start today.
Sure, we can do that. So those two things for sure, and then.
I mean, even a Main Street wants to come up and promote a Main Street project. It's all city-related things. I can't think of anything that I would want to try to put a limit on it.
He was also
Farmers
suggesting perhaps the status of the Ermitinger.
If they want to promote it, I'm not saying bring all the farmers over.
No, but okay.
But it's an entity in the group in the city that the city commission supports. I would say then we could support it and completely move forward.
There's also the volunteer group downtown on Saturdays that's running that little market there. I forgot the name of that.
Yeah. I mean,
what about the Trails Group?
Yeah, Oregon City Trail Alliance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, any of those organizations we work with.
It would give it more meat.
I agree. I mean, it's a really great way to kick it up.
And we'll also ask them for more door prizes. Those went over really well, especially like the pool passes and things like that. That was really fun giving those prizes away.
I think that was more the person doing.
Oh well.
So we can.
The person that got the 4 hours at one of the park shelters, she was really excited about that.
Okay.
So we can put out the kind of the preliminary invitations to those organizations, and if you think of anything else, please feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call or something.
And can we meet at 6 o'clock before the night of the next meeting and kind of finalize this? All right, then let's move on to arts in the parks.
That's on your agenda at a request from Roger. So, Roger, I don't know if you want to
Can we,
talk about
because
that.
of the time, do you think we can push it to the next meeting? It's not something that needs to be done tonight,
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Other general business, any other business to bring up?
Got one other item for you. Again, it's just a quick update, but I want to make sure you know about this. Regarding the Newell Creek Canyon planning effort that Metro is leading, but that we've been engaged in as a city, and I know that this group has been particularly interested in that. There was a stakeholder meeting earlier this week, which I sit on that committee, and at that meeting we kind of fleshed out some things and stuff that's going to be presented at the next public meeting, which is what I wanted to make sure you knew about, and you may get an invitation. I think you might already be on an email list, but if not, I'm going to make sure that that gets forwarded to you again. But as kind of a heads up, it's June 16th at 6 o'clock at the Pioneer Center. That will be a public meeting number 3. It'll be the third one that's been held for anybody to come and see what the kind of the latest plans are, the proposed ideas that are being suggested. So.
That was 6 o'clock again?
Yeah, 6 o'clock. June 16th, 6 o'clock, Pioneer Center. Just wanna
There will
make sure.
also be a presentation by them on this at the Hillendale Neighborhood Association on July 7th, because that goes through our neighborhood. So.
Okay, I think we are on number 6, PrAC member reports. Can we start down here with Roger?
Yes, I have a few items from the Pioneer Center. The Pioneer Center's garden was cleaned up and planted. We had a successful dental day, and the dental van was paid for by grants. And the Pioneer Center's car that was used for Meals on Wheels will be replaced as it stopped running. We are now using Mo trustee funds to help purchase the vehicle.
That's Meals on Wheels? Is that what MO stands for?
That's correct.
Okay. I read that email and thought, what
Well,
does
that's the way it was presented to be,
Okay.
and Kathy was
So,
out for
the
this.
Meals on Wheels is buying themselves a new car. All
You
right.
could do Mal so we don't confuse us with our library director.
I thought it was moved.
I want to say, I did walk by the Pioneer Center gardens the other day, and they do look really nice, and I appreciate all the work that they're doing there, and the roses over there look good, and thank you very much, and I have nothing new to present.
I'll go last, Sean.
I have nothing, thank you.
Wow. Katie.
I attended the Memorial Day celebration at Mountain View. It was really nicely presented. It was a beautiful day and well attended. So.
Thank you. Doug?
Was. That's fine.
Well, I noticed that we had this walking and biking map, and it's my assumption that this would be updated with your recommendation, Doug, to have it more extensive, including all the trails out, even outside the city, how they join and so forth. Is that correct?
That's right.
Then in the around town put out by the Chamber of Commerce, they had a nice article. Maybe you people get this. It came in my mail, but it's a nice page on the Parks and Recreation Department. All our parks listed and the services that we have. And then there was another page on bike, walk, or hike on the intertwine, which is also part of the same topic about our trails and bike trails and so forth. So there's a lot of interest in this trail business. And I was a bit frustrated at a couple of our presenters tonight. And there was a time or two that I was going to speak out more aggressively when our staff was attacked. I really am sorry about that. But I think, Scott, you handled it very well. It really is out of bounds when that happens. And even if people do not agree, and there is going to be a lot of things that that we don't necessarily agree on, but our behavior ought to be positive at any rate. So those are my comments, and now we're down to staff reports.
So quickly, and again, if you have any questions, please feel free. The Ermitinger House project update, essentially we've done, as of today, what is called a punch list meeting, which we walk through with the contractor and say these are the things that need to be done correctly or better or at all or whatever. And Denise, I don't know if you have anything quickly to add to that, but we're kind of moving towards the final stretch of that project.
So you will start seeing some significant exterior differences. We are about ready to paint the exterior. The landscaping will go in. We have some paving and curbs that will go back in. So the things you won't see are the interior. We'll also be painting the interior now that a lot of the dust has settled, literally. And we'll be starting up some of the, once everything is kind of finished, then we'll start up some of the equipment and make sure it runs and we get kind of the green light on go ahead for all of those things. So we're looking at about 2 weeks to complete the major portions, and we're hoping that some of the punch list items will be detailed out during those 2 weeks by the contractor.
Thanks.
Just a question, and I don't expect an answer now. Maybe as the use of how the Ermitinger is going to be open, how it's going to function at one point could be brought to us.
No, but I want to say, I do want to tell you that you just triggered something that I meant to include as part of my comment, that I've mentioned this before, we have a consultant working for us that is doing I guess we're calling it a programming study. We're just about done with that, and this will be followed up with this committee. It's also going to be presented before your next meeting. The draft final report will be presented to the commission at their June work session, so the Tuesday following the first Wednesday meeting. So if you're interested in that, you can either attend or tune in or whatever, but I would want to let you know that that's going to be presented, but then also be shared with the PRAC. So it's going to be basically a recommendation for some ways that you can consider a strategy. So I think that's what you're talking about probably, Doug. And so more to come on that for sure. Just a few other real quick things. At your last meeting, it was requested that I bring to you a Cove development update. What I've done is I asked our economic development manager, Eric Underwood, to give a written update. That's copied to you at the information I gave you in your places. That's pretty explanatory about what's going on with the current phase. The park's considerations are in later phases. I can kind of just summarize that for you. You'll read that, and not much to be concerned about at this point. That's a little bit further down the road, but if you have any questions about that after you've read it, please do let me know. You can either direct your questions to me or to Eric. That's an economic development and urban renewal project, is why Eric has provided that information. Next is that I gave you, also at your request from the last meeting, a list. Somebody said, can you give us a list of the actual projects that we talk about, this deferred maintenance? So I provided you the most up-to-date list that we've got. That doesn't include price tags because we've got to update that information a little bit, but just to give you an idea, when we say deferred maintenance, these are what we're talking about specifically. So again, any questions, please feel free. The recreation update was emailed to you. So if you ever have any questions about those when you get them, please let us know. That's just, again, for your information. And then lastly, Katie mentioned the Memorial Day event was held on Monday at the cemetery. I know there were some of you that were there, Joyce and William, and also Doug and Katie. It was very well attended. It usually is, and it's just, I just want to say from staff perspective that we take a lot of pride in that, and our staff, our parks maintenance staff, who, as you know, maintains our cemetery, they do a tremendous job of putting that together. They spend a lot of extra time to appropriately present the cemetery on that day, and just a lot of extra TLC goes into that event. And then we also have some folks that help us, the Boy Scouts, do the flags on the graves, and there's a Friends of the Cemetery group that is involved that help us out. So it's not just our staff, but it's a really nice event. What was it? Yeah, ROTC, the high school kids come and do. And the junior high band from Gardner plays, and they do a really nice job, and it's just
great job.
Yeah, so, yes, Joyce. Sorry.
I just wanted to bring up that I heard from one of my neighbors that Hillendale Park, the pathways, he's now in a motorized wheelchair, and that we really need to do some work, if at all possible, because there are a couple of sections on that pathway that he has real difficulty navigating with his wheelchair, and he has to go off the path, and if it's muddy at all, it creates a problem, and he's had to turn around and go back home once, not go to where his destination, because he could not navigate the pathway. So
Okay.
if we
Yeah,
could take a look at that and identify some places to fix, that would be
We
really
have,
helpful.
yeah, I appreciate that input, and again, I know this is kind of broken record, but we have
It's
many
all money. Yeah.
unfortunate circumstances like that in a lot of our parks that we just are, trying to figure out how to address and how to prioritize, and so, yeah, totally understand that, but thank you for that.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Denise?
One quick announcement. The high school construction group is having a recognition for, the stage is almost complete. It is the end of the school year, so they're recognizing these students for their efforts and dedication to that project. It's going to be tomorrow night at EOT at the stage at 6 p.m., so if you have an interest in attending, you're always welcome.
Again, what time and what?
6 p.m. tomorrow night at the EOT stage.
Great.
Thanks for mentioning, Denise.
And thank you. In fact, I was
Yeah.
teaching that class today, and so I know what's going on. They've got the chairs and the tables all ready to go down there. And they did say that one of their last things they have to do is some waterproofing, but that's their last task before the end of the school year.
Yeah, there's a few little things that we're going to end up finishing because their school year is going to be completed and they can't keep going, but it's almost done, and we're just going to put the finishing touches on that project. So it's turned out really nice. So anyway, that's it.
Anything else? What time is it? 9:30? We are adjourned?